The alien queen was stunned when the human she married unleashed his true power. Birds with shimmering feathers sang songs that resonated with the palace walls, and streams of crystal-clear water danced along marble channels. It was a world of beauty, order, and power, a world ruled by Queen Lysara, the most respected and feared figure in the galaxy. Her psychic abilities were unmatched, her intellect sharper than any starship's computer, and her presence commanded loyalty and awe from every creature on the planet. Today was not just any day. It was the day the Queen would meet the human envoy, a man named Ethan Cole, who had traveled across light years of space to negotiate trade agreements, cultural exchange, and alliances. Humans were considered fragile, clever, and adaptable, but in most alien societies they were underestimated. To many Zitharans, humans were interesting but insignificant, a curiosity rather than a power to be respected. Ethan stepped off his small starship, feeling the weight of hundreds of alien eyes upon him. He was an average human in appearance, tall, with dark hair and brown eyes, but there was something in his posture that betrayed confidence. He walked steadily, scanning the grand palace before him, and took a deep breath. He knew this meeting would not be easy. The palace doors opened, revealing Lysara. She was taller than most humans would imagine, her skin a smooth violet hue, her eyes a deep silver that seemed to pierce through walls, thoughts, and intentions. She moved with grace, her every gesture precise and commanding. She did not speak at first, simply observing Ethan, studying him as if trying to read the story of his life in his expression alone. Ethan bowed respectfully, though he did not cower. "Your Majesty, I am honored to meet you," he said. His voice was steady, carrying no fear despite the aura of power surrounding her. Lysara's gaze lingered on him. "You are human," she said finally, her voice melodic but firm. "And yet you stand before me with no trembling, no doubt. That is unusual." Ethan straightened. "I was raised to respect strength, Your Majesty, but I do not fear it. I seek to understand it." A silence followed, stretching long enough for the court to murmur in surprise. The human's courage and honesty impressed her, and for the first time in many cycles, Lysara found her interest genuinely piqued. The meeting began. Negotiations were tense but civil. Ethan's intelligence, his quick thinking, and his unique perspective impressed even the most skeptical advisors. While other envoys would bow to power, Ethan asked questions that no Zitharan had considered, offering solutions that were both clever and practical. He suggested ways to share knowledge between humans and Zitharans, methods to improve agriculture on distant planets, and strategies for defense that relied not on sheer strength but on innovation and adaptability. By the end of the day, Lysara had grown curious, and not just as a queen with responsibilities. She was intrigued by the human before her, by the mind and spirit that seemed to defy all expectations. Days passed, and Ethan remained at the palace. He explored its halls, the libraries filled with knowledge that spanned centuries, and the gardens where alien flora glowed with bioluminescent beauty. Everywhere he went, he observed, learned, and adapted. The Queen's advisors, initially skeptical, began to notice his subtle brilliance. He was not just clever, he was extraordinary in ways they could not explain. Lysara, too, found herself observing him more than she had anticipated. She noticed the small things, the way he paused to watch a leaf drift in the wind, how he smiled when he solved a problem that stumped Zitharan engineers, and how he treated everyone around him with respect, from the palace guards to the cooks in the kitchens. His kindness, courage, and curiosity were unlike anything she had seen in her long life. One evening, under the glow of Zithara's twin moons, Lysara and Ethan walked through the palace gardens. The air was filled with the scent of alien blossoms, and the soft hum of energy fields created a calm, almost magical atmosphere. "You humans are different than I expected," Lysara said, breaking the silence. Her voice was quiet, thoughtful. Ethan glanced at her, curious. Different how? You are fragile yet strong in ways I cannot measure. You are clever, yet your intelligence is not just knowledge, it is creativity. You see solutions where others see problems. You take risks, but you understand their consequences. You adapt. She stopped walking and faced him fully. Most species rely on strength, on power, on rules. Humans rely on spirit. Ethan felt a warmth in his chest. Few beings in the galaxy had ever spoken to him with such honesty, and none had studied him so closely without fear or prejudice. I believe that is what makes humans human, he said softly. Lysara's gaze lingered. Perhaps that is why I find myself curious about you, Ethan Cole. More than curiosity, perhaps something stronger. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He had sensed a bond forming, a connection deeper than friendship, and now the Queen of Zithra was acknowledging it. Your Majesty, I respect you deeply, not just for your power but for your wisdom and your heart. I would be honored to learn from you in every way possible. The weeks turned into months. Ethan and Lysara spent time together, sharing knowledge, exploring ideas, and facing minor crises within the palace. During this time, Lysara came to understand something remarkable. Ethan's abilities went beyond human norms. He could think in ways no other human or alien could, predicting patterns, reading situations, and creating solutions that seemed almost magical. Yet, he never boasted, never sought attention. His strength lay in humility, courage, and ingenuity, a combination that even the most advanced alien minds could not replicate. One day, the Queen summoned her court. A murmur ran through the room as everyone wondered what the occasion could be. Lysara stood before them, radiant and commanding, her eyes fixed on Ethan. I have made a decision, she announced. The words hung in the air like a shockwave. I will marry Ethan Cole, a human. Gasps filled the room. Some advisors whispered, others stared in disbelief. Humans marrying a Zitharan queen was unheard of. Many considered it impossible, a breach of tradition, even dangerous. Ethan stepped forward, calm but aware of the weight of this moment. Your Majesty, I am honored. I will serve you and your people with loyalty, respect, and courage always. The Queen smiled, a rare, gentle smile that softened her otherwise intimidating presence. I know you will, Ethan. But understand, marriage to me is not just a bond of hearts. It is a union of responsibility, of leadership, and of destiny. Are you prepared for that? Ethan met her gaze steadily. I am. With you, I will face whatever challenges come. Together, we will lead. The court fell silent. Slowly, some advisors bowed, acknowledging the union. Others still whispered, skeptical, but the Queen's decision was final. She had chosen, and she would not be swayed. That night, Ethan walked in the palace gardens alone, thinking about the future. He knew the galaxy would doubt him, underestimate him, and perhaps even try to challenge him. But he also knew something deeper, that humans had a potential that no alien could fully understand. And with the Queen by his side, he felt ready to reveal that potential when the time came. Meanwhile, Lysara watched from a balcony, the twin moons casting silver light on her violet skin. She felt a mixture of anticipation and curiosity. She had chosen a human, a species she had once considered limited. And yet, something told her that this decision would change not just her life, but the destiny of Zithra and perhaps the entire galaxy. In the quiet of the night, both human and alien prepared themselves for a future that neither could yet imagine. A future where courage, spirit, and ingenuity might prove more powerful than strength or tradition. And as the stars of Zithra shimmered overhead, one truth became clear. The galaxy had never seen a union like this, and it would never be the same again. The palace of Zithra, with its towering spires and glittering energy fields, was unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. Every wall seemed alive, pulsing faintly with light, while crystal floors reflected the glow of twin suns. The gardens sprawled endlessly, filled with plants that shimmered, changed color with the light, or sang in soft, melodic tones. Even the air carried a faint energy, making humans like Ethan feel alert, aware, alive in a way they had never imagined. Life at the palace was not easy, however. The advisors and ministers were wary. Humans were considered fragile, weak, and easily overwhelmed by the pressures of the galaxy. Some openly doubted that Ethan could live among Zitherans, let alone marry their queen. Ethan, however, did not falter. Each day he rose with the suns, trained with the palace guards, learned the language of Zitharan culture, and studied their advanced technologies. He asked questions that sometimes annoyed the advisors but always revealed new possibilities. "Why do your energy shields fluctuate when a storm approaches?" Ethan asked one afternoon while examining a wall panel. A senior advisor frowned. "That is how it has always been, human. The shields respond to energy surges. It is sufficient." Ethan shook his head. "Sufficient does not mean optimal. If we adjust the flow slightly, we can prevent power loss entirely. The storm will have no effect and we can save energy for emergencies." The advisor stared at him, skeptical. "You are bold, human. Most of your kind would not question Zitharan systems." Ethan smiled politely. "Sometimes the best solutions come from a fresh perspective." By evening, the advisor had tested Ethan's suggestion and found it worked perfectly. Word began to spread. The human was clever, perhaps smarter than some Zitherans. Even Lysara watched with interest, proud but careful not to show it too openly. Outside the palace, the human had another set of challenges. Zithra was a living world, filled with creatures of every shape and size, many of which were dangerous. One morning, a wild stellar fang, a wolf-like beast with energy-charged fangs, broke into the palace gardens. The palace guards hesitated, unsure if they could contain it. Ethan stepped forward. He observed the beast carefully, noting its movements, its pauses, its energy patterns. Then calmly he approached. "It's scared," he said softly, "not aggressive. We just need to show it we mean no harm." The guards watched, holding their weapons. Ethan crouched slightly, extended his hand, and spoke in a soft, steady voice. The stellar fang's ears twitched. Its eyes glowed faintly, but it did not attack. Slowly, Ethan led it back toward the forest boundary, guiding it without force. The palace erupted in whispers. No human had ever approached a wild Zitharan creature without armor or weapon. The queen herself observed quietly from a balcony. Lysara's silver eyes widened in surprise. This human, he was more than he seemed. Over time, Ethan also learned about the culture of Zithra. The queen's court was filled with rituals, tests of intelligence, and psychic challenges. Many of these tests were meant to evaluate loyalty, cunning, and power. While other humans would have struggled, Ethan excelled. He observed patterns, noticed subtleties, and responded in ways no one expected. One evening, Lysara invited him to the palace library. It was a vast hall, walls lined with knowledge from countless planets. Floating data crystals hovered in the air, projecting information on trade, warfare, culture, and history. "Most humans would be overwhelmed here," Lysara said as she walked beside him. "Your species is curious, yes, but also fragile. I expected fear, hesitation." Ethan glanced around, eyes wide with wonder. "I am learning, Your Majesty. That is what humans do. We learn, adapt, and grow. Strength is not always measured in power. It is also in knowledge, in understanding, in what you do with what you know." Lysara paused, impressed. "You speak with the clarity of a seasoned leader. Yet you are young, untested in true conflict." Ethan nodded. "Perhaps, but every challenge is a test. I intend to face them all." The queen smiled faintly, a rare gesture. She saw in him a potential that most Zitherans could not understand. Humans had an unusual ability to adapt, to combine courage, intelligence, and creativity in ways that advanced species rarely predicted. Despite his successes, life in the palace was not without difficulties. Some advisors attempted to humiliate him, testing his patience, mocking his human nature, or doubting his abilities. But Ethan never retaliated with anger. Instead, he listened, observed, and quietly proved them wrong. One day, a counselor challenged him. "Human, you claim to understand our technology and culture, but you will never survive Zither combat training. You will fail." Ethan smiled. "Perhaps, but I will try and I will learn. Failure is part of growth." The counselor smirked. "You will see. Your human limitations will be exposed." When the combat simulation began, Ethan moved with calculated precision. His reactions were quick, his strategies innovative. Where Zitherans relied on raw power, he relied on ingenuity. He anticipated opponents' moves, using the environment, timing, and observation to gain advantage. By the end, even the skeptics were stunned. He had not only survived but excelled, outperforming seasoned warriors twice his size. Lysara observed quietly, her mind racing. This human, he might be underestimated by the galaxy, but she had begun to understand something powerful. Beyond palace politics and challenges, Ethan and Lysara spent time together in quiet moments, learning from each other. They walked among the glowing gardens, studied the stars, and discussed philosophy, science, and the mysteries of life. "You humans are unusual," Lysara said one night as they looked at Zithra's twin moons. "You face danger, uncertainty, even fear, and yet you persist. You are not the strongest, not the fastest, and not the most powerful, but your spirit, it is formidable." Ethan nodded. "Humans survive because we adapt and we care. Strength alone is not enough. To truly lead, you need courage, creativity, and heart." The queen considered this. For centuries, she had ruled by power and intellect. But she could see now that humans, small and seemingly fragile, had qualities that even she could respect, and perhaps even rely upon. Weeks passed, and the bond between human and queen grew. The palace guards began to respect him, the advisors began to notice his skills, and even the more skeptical counselors began to reconsider their prejudice. Everywhere he went, Ethan quietly proved that humans were not weak. However, not everyone welcomed this change. Rumors began to spread in the outer regions of Zithra's empire. Aliens from other planets, hearing of the human who had married the queen, whispered of danger, of betrayal, of unpredictability. Some saw humans as a threat, others as a curiosity. Ethan was aware of the tension, but he did not falter. He spent time learning the palace defenses, studying the history of interstellar conflicts, and preparing for any challenge that might arise. He trained not just for himself, but for those who depended on him, including the queen. Then, one day, an incident occurred that tested him like never before. A sudden energy storm struck the palace's outer districts. The protective shields faltered, and creatures from the surrounding wildlands began to breach the boundaries. Panic spread quickly among the inhabitants. Ethan acted instantly. He coordinated the palace guards, reinforced shields using his own innovative methods, and even ventured outside to guide civilians to safety. His calm, strategic mind prevented disaster. By the time the storm subsided, lives had been saved, and the palace remained intact. Lysara watched in awe. Humans had never displayed such resilience under extreme danger. She realized that Ethan's abilities were not just cleverness, they were courage, adaptability, and leadership all combined. He had faced chaos and turned it into order, a skill that even the strongest Zitherans often lacked. That evening, she found him in the palace gardens, exhausted but serene. "Ethan," she said softly, approaching him, "you have done something remarkable today. Not with raw power, but with your mind, your courage, your heart. I am impressed beyond measure." Ethan smiled faintly. "I do what I must. That is what humans do. We face challenges and we find a way. Sometimes it works, sometimes it fails, but we keep going." Lysara's silver eyes softened. Perhaps the galaxy has underestimated your kind. Perhaps humans are more formidable than any of us imagined. Ethan met her gaze. I do not seek to prove superiority. I only seek to protect, to learn, and to grow. But if that changes how others see us, then I will accept it. The queen nodded slowly, understanding dawning in her mind. Here was a human who could survive, thrive, and lead among aliens, not because of raw strength, but because of his spirit. And she realized quietly that the future of Zithra, and perhaps the galaxy, might depend on him. As the twin moons rose over the palace, Ethan and Lysara stood together in the gardens, watching the shimmering landscape. Around them, the palace pulsed with light, energy, and life, a fitting symbol of a world on the edge of change. Change that would soon test not only humans and aliens but the very limits of courage, loyalty, and power. And Ethan, the human who had married the Queen of Zithra, was ready. The calm of Zithra's twin sons was shattered one morning by a warning alarm that echoed across the palace. Red lights flashed, and the energy fields surrounding the palace pulsed violently. The Varkans, a warlike alien species notorious across several star systems, were approaching Zithra's orbit. They were not here to negotiate or trade, they were here to conquer. Queen Lysara immediately convened her advisors in the Grand War Council chamber, a massive hall filled with holographic maps, energy projectors, and psychic amplifiers. The room hummed with tension, the air thick with fear and uncertainty. The Varkans are here, Lysara announced, her silver eyes scanning the council. They seek to capture me and seize our technology, prepare the defenses, activate all shields and ready the palace fleet. The advisors nodded quickly, though many wore expressions of doubt. Zitharans were strong, but the Varkans were unpredictable, ruthless, and technologically advanced. Even with the Queen's psychic power, victory was not guaranteed. Ethan stood beside Lysara, observing the situation carefully. "Your Majesty, we should consider not just defense but strategy," he said calmly. "We can use their aggression against them, guide them into traps, and turn their strength into weakness." A senior advisor scoffed. "Human, this is war, not a game. Our shields are strong, our fleet is advanced. You cannot simply outthink the Varkans." Ethan met the advisor's gaze steadily. "Perhaps, but we cannot rely only on strength. We need creativity, speed, and adaptability. That is what humans do best." Lysara studied him, a flicker of curiosity and admiration crossing her face. She had seen Ethan's ingenuity before, but never under the stress of real battle. Within hours, the Varkan fleet entered Zithra's orbit. Their ships were sleek, dark, and bristling with weapons that pulsed with dangerous energy. Their commanders communicated in harsh, guttural tones, issuing orders with precision and cruelty. The palace fleet rose to meet them, shimmering ships of silver and violet light cutting through the void. Energy beams fired in all directions, creating brilliant flashes that lit up the dark sky. Explosions rocked the battlefields above and around the palace, sending shockwaves that rattled the walls. Ethan quickly assessed the situation. He noticed patterns in the Varkan formations, how their ships moved, how their attacks were timed, and where their weak points lay. "Your Majesty," he called, "if we focus our defenses here and use the gravitational fields of Zithra's moons, we can disrupt their formations and force them into narrow paths. They will be vulnerable." Lysara nodded slowly. "Very well, I will follow your plan. Prepare the fleet." Ethan moved swiftly, coordinating with the Zitharan captains. His strategies were unconventional but precise. Using his understanding of physics, energy flow, and timing, he directed the fleet to create a series of traps and ambush points. The Varkans, confident in their superior strength, fell into the patterns almost immediately. Ships collided, energy beams misfired, and chaos erupted within their ranks. Even with his strategic genius, the battle was brutal. Varkan boarding parties attempted to land on the palace itself, seeking to capture Lysara. Palace guards fought valiantly, but many struggled against the advanced Varkan technology. Ethan did not hesitate. He entered the fray directly, wielding a combination of human ingenuity and his natural reflexes. He used the environment to his advantage, luring attackers into traps, guiding them away from civilians, and disabling critical systems with precision. His calm and quick thinking turned potential disasters into victories. Lysara observed from the central balcony, her mind racing. She had faced countless battles in her life, yet the human beside her was extraordinary. He was not the strongest, not the most psychic, and not the fastest, yet his combination of intelligence, courage, and adaptability made him a formidable force. She began to see that humans were underestimated not because they lacked potential, but because their potential was hidden, waiting for the right moment to emerge. Amid the chaos, a squadron of Varkan elite warriors broke through the palace's outer defenses, heading straight for the central throne chamber where Lysara was stationed. The queen prepared her psychic shields, ready to confront them, but Ethan acted first. He moved with incredible speed, intercepting the Varkan squad before they reached the throne. Using energy manipulators he had quickly recalibrated, he created barriers and diversions that confused the invaders. He was precise, efficient, and fearless, a combination that the Varkans had not anticipated. "Human," one Varkan commander shouted, "you cannot withstand us." Ethan glanced back, a calm expression on his face. "Watch me," he said simply. With careful timing and calculated maneuvers, he disarmed the squad, forcing them to retreat. The palace guards followed his lead, inspired by his courage. Even the queen herself felt a strange sense of pride. This human, small and fragile in appearance, was protecting her and the palace with extraordinary skill. After the immediate threat passed, Lysara confronted Ethan. "Your abilities, they are unlike any human I have seen." "How is this possible?" she asked, her voice a mixture of astonishment and concern. Ethan paused, looking at her seriously. "Humans have a latent energy, Your Majesty. Most of us never awaken it. It lies within, waiting for extreme situations to trigger it. When survival, courage, and ingenuity combine, we can perform feats that even advanced species cannot predict." The queen studied him in silence. She had always known humans were resilient, but this was beyond anything she could have imagined. The Varkans were not defeated yet. They regrouped, their commanders furious at the unexpected resistance. Ethan and Lysara knew the next attack would be more coordinated and dangerous. They worked together, combining the queen's psychic abilities with Ethan's strategies, to fortify the palace and prepare for the next wave. As night fell on Zithra, the twin moons casting silver light over the palace, Ethan walked among the soldiers. He offered encouragement, analyzed weapon systems, and shared insights about the Varkan tactics. His calm presence inspired confidence, turning fear into determination. Lysara watched quietly, realizing that the human beside her was more than a partner. He was a leader. Not in the traditional sense, but in a way that inspired loyalty, courage, and hope. Even the most skeptical Zitharans began to trust him, understanding that his mind and spirit were as powerful as any weapon. The Varkans launched a surprise attack at dawn. This time, they targeted multiple sectors, attempting to divide and conquer. Ethan anticipated their strategy, positioning forces strategically, and using the terrain of Zithra to create choke points. He predicted their movements almost before they happened, coordinating the palace fleet and ground defenses with precision. Despite the intense battle, Ethan's leadership held. Zitharan forces, bolstered by his guidance, repelled wave after wave of attacks. Every move he made was calculated, combining logic, observation, and a deep understanding of human and alien strengths. During the fighting, a massive Varkan warship attempted to breach the palace shields directly. Lysara prepared to use all her psychic power to stop it, but Ethan intervened. "Let me try a diversion," he said. He focused his energy, drawing upon his latent human potential. The shields responded to his manipulation in ways the Varkans could not predict. The massive warship was caught in a gravitational loop, its weapons misfiring, its energy disrupted. The Varkans were forced to retreat once again, humiliated and confused. The queen could not hide her amazement. You have exceeded anything I could have imagined," she said. "Humans, your kind is remarkable." Ethan shook his head, exhausted but calm. "I am just doing what humans do. We survive, we adapt, and sometimes in the face of impossible odds we rise to meet the challenge." By the end of the day, Zithra had survived, though the threat of the Varkans remained. The palace was damaged in places, and the people were weary, but morale was high. The Varkans had learned something important. Humans, especially this human, were not to be underestimated. That evening, as the twin moons reflected on the palace walls, Lysara and Ethan stood together overlooking the gardens. The air was still charged with residual energy from the battle, and the palace pulsed faintly in response to the queen's psychic presence. "You have changed everything," Lysara said softly. "Not just the outcome of the battle, but how my people see humans. I underestimated your potential, and I see now how wrong that was." Ethan smiled faintly, though he was tired. "It is not about underestimation, Your Majesty. It is about possibility. Humans can rise to meet challenges, even when no one expects it, and sometimes our true potential only shows when the stakes are highest." Lysara reached out and placed a hand on his arm. "I sense there is even more within you. Something you have not yet revealed, a power waiting for the right moment." Ethan looked at her seriously. "Perhaps, but that moment has not come yet. For now, we prepare, we learn, and we protect those who cannot protect themselves." The night deepened and the palace grew quiet. Yet even in the stillness, both human and queen knew that the shadows of war were not gone. The Varkans would return, stronger and more determined. And when they did, Zithra would need every ounce of courage, ingenuity, and power that its defenders could muster. Ethan had survived his first true test among the stars. He had proven that humans were more than fragile, more than limited, and the galaxy had begun to notice. But even he did not yet realize the full extent of his latent potential, a force that could reshape not just battles, but entire civilizations. And the day it awakened, the universe would never be the same again. The sky over Zithra burned with the orange glow of battle as the Varkans returned, larger and more determined than ever. Word of their previous defeat had reached their leaders, and they were not willing to leave empty-handed. This time, they came with a vengeance, bringing dozens of massive warships and elite warriors designed for one purpose: capture Queen Lysara and claim Zithra's advanced technology. In the palace, preparations for the attack were already underway. Shields hummed, troops assembled, and the palace fleet floated above the planet like a shimmering constellation. Yet, even amidst the organization, there was tension. The advisors were nervous. Some whispered that this time the Varkans might succeed. The pressure weighed heavily on everyone except Ethan. Ethan stood at the palace balcony, gazing at the incoming fleet. He had observed their formations, studied their previous mistakes, and felt the familiar spark of determination. Something inside him stirred, a latent energy he had always sensed but never fully understood. Now, in the face of overwhelming danger, it began to awaken. Queen Lysara approached him quietly. "Ethan, I can feel it. You are calm, but there is power in you, something you have not yet revealed." Ethan nodded slowly. "It is there, Your Majesty. I feel it too. Humans have a hidden potential, most never awaken it. But in moments like this, when everything is at stake, it can emerge." The first wave of Varkan ships entered Zithra's orbit, firing energy beams that streaked across the sky like bolts of lightning. Palace shields flared. absorbing most of the damage, but some explosions rocked the lower districts, sending tremors through the city. Civilians scrambled for safety, and the palace guards engaged in fierce combat with boarding parties. Ethan moved swiftly among the defenders, his presence calm but commanding. He directed soldiers with precision, predicted enemy movements, and neutralized threats with skill that amazed even seasoned Zitharans. Yet, even as he acted, he felt the energy inside him growing stronger. It was as if the danger itself was awakening a part of him that had always existed but had never been needed, until now. A massive Varkan dreadnought broke through the outer shields, its energy weapons cutting through the sky with terrifying precision. The palace fleet struggled to contain it and the queen prepared to unleash her psychic power, but Ethan intervened. He stepped forward and the energy around him began to shift. A faint glow appeared, pulsing from within him. At first it was subtle, almost invisible, but then it grew brighter, spreading like fire through his body. The air around him seemed to vibrate, responding to his presence. Lysara's eyes widened. By the stars, it is happening. Ethan raised his hands, and energy responded to his will. Shields around the palace strengthened, weaving themselves into intricate patterns that even Zitharan engineers had never imagined. He projected force fields that diverted incoming attacks, and energy blasts that disarmed enemy boarding parties without harming civilians. His movements became faster, almost too fast for the eye to follow, and his mind calculated countless possibilities simultaneously. The queen watched, stunned, as the human she had married displayed a level of power that no Zitharan, or even the Varkans, could comprehend. This is beyond anything I expected," she whispered. Ethan did not answer. He was focused, aware of every movement, every threat, every chance to protect his people. The latent potential of humanity had awakened within him, not as a weapon for conquest, but as a force to defend, to adapt, and to protect. The Varkans, confused and alarmed, tried to adjust their strategy. Their ships moved erratically, energy weapons misfired, and their elite warriors hesitated as the barriers and force fields created by Ethan blocked their paths. For the first time in their history, the Varkans encountered an opponent they could not predict. Even Zitharan soldiers were astonished. They had fought countless battles, faced innumerable enemies, and yet they had never witnessed a human controlling energy on this scale. Ethan moved among them, reinforcing their positions, guiding their attacks, and inspiring them with his calm confidence. Then the Varkans attempted a direct assault on the queen herself. A group of elite warriors broke through the palace's outer defenses, heading straight for the central throne chamber. Lysara raised her psychic shields, ready to defend herself, but Ethan acted before she could. He extended his hands, and energy responded instantly. A shimmering barrier enveloped the queen, stronger than any psychic shield alone. With a focused gesture, he projected waves of force that repelled the attackers, sending them tumbling back into the chaos outside. The Varkans retreated, astonished by the human's power, unable to comprehend how one being could control energy on such a scale. Lysara approached Ethan, her silver eyes wide with awe. "Ethan, you are incredible. I underestimated your potential. This is power I have never seen, even in the strongest Zitharans." Ethan looked at her, sweat on his brow, eyes glowing faintly with the energy he controlled. "This is not about me, your majesty. Humans survive by adapting, by rising to challenges. This power, it exists within all of us. I am only showing it now because it is needed." Together, they coordinated the final defense. The queen combined her psychic abilities with Ethan's human energy manipulation, creating a synergy that amplified both their powers. They directed energy flows, strengthened shields, and neutralized the Varkan fleet with precise strikes that disabled weapons and engines without unnecessary destruction. The battlefield transformed into a spectacle of light and power. Varkan ships spun out of control, their elite warriors fell back in confusion, and the palace forces advanced with renewed strength. Every move was calculated, every action purposeful, and every energy wave guided by Ethan's awakened human potential. After hours of intense combat, the Varkans began to retreat, their leaders realizing that this planet, this queen, and this human were forces they could not overcome. The battle was won, and Zithra survived, though it bore the scars of conflict. As silence returned to the palace, Ethan stood among the soldiers, breathing heavily but composed. Guards and civilians alike approached him, some in awe, others in disbelief. Whispers spread through the halls. "The human, he is more than we imagined." Lysara approached, placing her hand gently on his arm. "You have done the impossible," she said softly, "not just with strength but with courage, intelligence, and spirit. The galaxy underestimated humans, and you have proven them wrong." Ethan shook his head. "I did what had to be done. Humans can rise to challenges, adapt, and protect those who cannot protect themselves. That is our true strength." The queen smiled, a rare warmth in her expression. "I see now why I chose you. Not for power alone, but for the heart and mind that guides it. You have awakened something extraordinary, not just in yourself, but in the way the galaxy sees humanity." In the days that followed, Zithra began to recover. Repairs were made to damaged districts, wounded were cared for, and the palace defenses were reinforced further. Yet, the memory of the battle remained, and with it, a new understanding of humans. Aliens across the galaxy began to speak of Ethan Cole, the human who had married the Queen of Zithra and unleashed a power that defied imagination. Rumors spread. Humans were no longer weak, no longer insignificant. They were adaptable, courageous, and capable of feats that rivaled the most advanced species. Even Zitharans, who had long considered themselves the pinnacle of intellect and power, began to look at humans differently. They realized that strength was not only measured by psychic abilities or technological mastery, but also by spirit, ingenuity, and the courage to face the impossible. Ethan and Lysara spent time together in the aftermath, walking through the palace gardens where alien plants glowed softly in the night. The twin moons reflected on the streams and fountains, creating a serene atmosphere that contrasted with the chaos of battle. "You have changed everything," Lysara said, her voice quiet. "The Varkans will not forget this day, and neither will the galaxy. Humans, your kind is remarkable." Ethan nodded. "I do not seek recognition. I only seek to protect, to adapt, and to grow. But perhaps now, humans will be seen differently. Perhaps our true potential will finally be understood." Lysara looked at him, her silver eyes reflecting pride and amazement. "I underestimated you, Ethan, but now I see that humans have a power that even I cannot fully measure. And together, we are stronger than anything the galaxy has faced." As night deepened over Zithra, Ethan felt the energy within him stabilize, no longer a surge of raw potential but a calm, controlled force. He had awakened a power that few had ever witnessed, a power that combined human adaptability, courage, and ingenuity with the challenges of a galaxy in turmoil. The Queen stood beside him, silently acknowledging that the human she had married was not only a partner but a force capable of shaping the future of Zithra, and perhaps the entire galaxy. And though the Varkans had retreated, both of them knew this was only the beginning. Greater challenges awaited, forces yet unknown would rise, and Ethan's true potential would be tested further. But for now, the palace was safe, the people inspired, and a new era had begun. A human had awakened his true power, and the universe would never again underestimate humanity. The victory over the Varkans had changed Zithra forever. Word of the battle spread across the galaxy, carrying the tale of a human who had awakened a power unlike any seen before. Ships from distant star systems paused in orbit to watch. Diplomats sought audiences with the queen and her human partner, and even the most skeptical Zitherans began to whisper with admiration rather than doubt. Ethan Cole, once seen as fragile and ordinary, had proven that humans were extraordinary, not because of raw strength, but because of courage, ingenuity, and the ability to rise when faced with impossible odds. Yet, even after the battle, the challenges of leadership and diplomacy remained. Zithra needed stability, trust among its people, and a vision for a future where humans could be respected and understood. Queen Lysara called a council meeting in the Grand Hall. Holographic projections of star systems and planets hovered in the air as advisors, captains, and diplomats assembled. She stood at the center, her aura commanding, yet her eyes glimmered with pride as she looked at Ethan beside her. "We have survived the Varkan threat," she began. "But survival is not enough. Our people are allies, and even our enemies must recognize that strength comes not just from power, but from unity, courage, and intelligence." Ethan stepped forward. "Your Majesty, the Varkans were powerful, but they underestimated what humans can do. We adapt, we learn, and we protect. That is our true strength. And if Zithra embraces these values, we can face any challenge in the galaxy." A murmur ran through the hall. Some advisors looked skeptical, others hopeful, but Lysara's presence lent authority to his words. She nodded at him. "Humans have been underestimated for centuries. Today, we prove that they are formidable, capable, and worthy of respect. And this alliance between human and Zitharan will show the galaxy the power of unity." Over the following weeks, Ethan and Lysara worked tirelessly to strengthen Zithara. They improved defenses, trained soldiers, and integrated human ingenuity into Zitharan technology. Energy shields were optimized, fleet formations were redesigned, and communication systems were enhanced. Every project reflected the human ability to innovate and adapt. Even daily life on Zithra began to change. Citizens who once doubted humans now observed Ethan in awe. He moved among them, offering guidance, helping with infrastructure repairs, and teaching young humans and Zitharans alike how to solve problems creatively. His humility and courage inspired not only humans but aliens as well. One afternoon, Ethan led a group of young trainees through a training exercise. "Observe the patterns," he said. "Predict the movements of your opponents and adapt. Strength alone will not win the day. Strategy, creativity, and courage will." A young Zitharan hesitated. "But humans are fragile. How can they truly compete with us?" Ethan smiled gently. "Fragility is not weakness. It is adaptability. When you face challenges, when you think creatively, you can accomplish things no one expects. Never underestimate anyone, especially not yourself." Meanwhile, the political landscape across the galaxy shifted. Other species, hearing of Ethan's abilities, began to approach Zithra with renewed respect. Diplomats sought alliances, trade agreements, and knowledge exchange. Humans, once considered secondary, were now seen as valuable partners. Despite the growing recognition, Ethan remained grounded. He continued to train, plan, and prepare for the unknown. The Varkans had retreated, but they were not gone. Threats would arise again, and the galaxy was full of unpredictable dangers. He knew that humanity's true test was not over, it had only just begun. Then, a message arrived from a distant star system. A coalition of planets, previously neutral, requested a meeting with Queen Lysara and Ethan Cole. They sought guidance and protection, recognizing that Zithra and its human ally represented a new standard of leadership and defense. Ethan studied the message carefully. "Your Majesty, this is an opportunity. We can show the galaxy that humans are not just survivors. They are leaders, innovators, and partners." Lysara nodded. "And with you at my side, Ethan, we will lead them. Together, we will create a future where humans are no longer underestimated." The meeting took place aboard the palace's central command station. Delegates from dozens of star systems gathered, observing Ethan closely. Many whispered among themselves, "The human, he is not just clever, he is extraordinary." Ethan addressed the assembly. "We have faced threats, we have survived, and we have grown stronger. Humans are not the weakest, nor the most fragile. We are adaptable, resilient, and capable of courage that no species should underestimate. Together, humans and Zitharans, we can protect and guide the galaxy toward peace, justice, and progress." The delegates were impressed. Some had expected arrogance or weakness. Instead, they saw humility, confidence, and vision. By the end of the meeting, alliances had been formed, plans drafted, and a sense of hope spread across the room. Back on Zithra, Ethan and Lysara returned to the palace gardens, now recovering from the previous battles. The alien flora glowed softly, reflecting the twin moons above. It was a moment of calm, a rare pause in a life filled with responsibility and conflict. "You have changed the galaxy," Lysara said quietly, "not through force alone, but through courage, intelligence, and heart. Humans, your species is remarkable." Ethan looked at her, eyes reflecting the light of the moons. "I did not do it alone. I had guidance, support, and the chance to act when it mattered. That is what humans do. We rise when needed, we adapt, and we protect. That is our true power." Lysara smiled, a mixture of pride and affection. "I see now why I chose you, not just for what you can do, but for who you are. Together, we can lead not only Zithra, but the galaxy, toward a future where courage, ingenuity, and spirit are valued above all else." The days turned into weeks, and the galaxy adjusted to a new reality. Humans were no longer underestimated. Across star systems, they were admired, respected, and even feared for their potential. Humanity had proven that its strength lay not in size or raw power, but in courage, intelligence, and adaptability. Ethan continued to train, teach, and lead. He worked with scientists to enhance technology, with soldiers to improve strategy, and with leaders to foster diplomacy. Every action reinforced the idea that humans were capable of greatness. Then, one day, the Varkans attempted a minor raid on a nearby colony. They underestimated the human presence once more. Ethan coordinated a defense, combining human ingenuity with Zitharan technology. The raid was stopped quickly and efficiently, with minimal damage and no casualties. The galaxy watched in awe as the human once dismissed as weak thwarted yet another advanced alien threat. In the aftermath, Lysara and Ethan stood together on the palace balcony, watching Zithara's twin suns dip below the horizon. The air was filled with the sounds of recovery, rebuilding, and life. "You have changed everything," Lysara said softly. "The galaxy will never see humans the same way again, and it is only the beginning." Ethan smiled, a quiet confidence in his expression. "The beginning, yes. But humans are ready. We have always been ready. And now, with allies like you, Your Majesty, we can face any challenge." The Queen placed a hand on his arm. "Together, we are unstoppable, not because of power alone, but because of courage, ingenuity, and heart. That is the true strength of our union and of humanity." As night fell, the palace glowed with life. The twin moons reflected in the streams and fountains, symbolizing balance, harmony, and hope. Zithra had survived war, strengthened alliances, and embraced a new era. Humans were no longer underestimated. They were no longer seen as fragile or secondary. They were recognized as a species capable of extraordinary courage, ingenuity, and leadership. And at the heart of this change was Ethan Cole, the human who had married the Queen, awakened his true power, and shown the galaxy that the human spirit was a force to be reckoned with. The galaxy had changed. And for the first time in centuries, humans were not only part of the stars, they were shaping their destiny among them. As Ethan and Lysara stood together, watching the twin suns disappear behind the horizon, a new understanding passed between them. The future was uncertain, the challenges many, but one truth remained clear. With courage, intelligence, and heart, humans and Zithorans together could face anything. And thus began a new era, an era of respect, hope, and unity, where humans were no longer underestimated, and the galaxy was forever transformed.